Hi, I'm Reese.
And I'm Nate.
And this is our channel, Weight Loss, What Works. Today, we're reviewing our experience with doing a purely vegetarian diet and Pilates.
Yes. And we'll start off everything with talking about the diet first. So, what did you think about vegetarianism?
Vegetarianism?
Vegetism.
Vegetarian. We didn't learn enough about it, for he never learned how to pronounce the word at all.
Yep.
I thought it was... I wouldn't call it a diet. Like, most people who do it just don't like meat or care about animals. That sort of thing. So, unlike other diets, I felt like I could pretty much eat whatever I wanted as long as it wasn't meat. We did what they sometimes call ovo vegetarian because you're allowed to eat eggs, which, actually Googling it scientifically, eggs are vegetarian. Fun fact, because they're not fertilized and would never become a chicken.
Yes.
But that said, I could eat cheese, I could eat half a bag of Cheetos, I could eat ice cream. Like, it just wasn't restrictive enough, if you're not counting calories, to actually be considered a diet, because you can eat a lot of things that are bad for you that don't have meat products.
Yeah, I guess the thing I would say about this diet is that all diets, in a sense, are like a form of like discipline, where it's like a discipline for yourself. And like comparing this, say, with the gluten diet, the gluten-free diet, yes, not specifically just gluten.
I will only eat gluten.
Yes.
Next diet.
Yes. But with the gluten-free diet, we did it for the express purpose of losing weight, and I felt I had a pretty good idea that I was going to at least reduce the amount of calories by a significant amount by not eating gluten. With vegetarianism, it is a discipline, but I feel it's more a discipline for morals and principle.
I've known people who have gone vegetarian just because they don't like the taste of meat, too.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, it does feel like it's more morals, which I can understand that.
Yeah.
I like animals. I just don't like them enough to not eat them.
Yeah, and I guess with vegetarianism, like, if you already don't like meat, then that's pretty easy switch to make. But if you already eat meat and like meat, and then you're just not going to eat meat, and it's like, well, I'm just eating ice cream now, so I know I'm not going to be losing weight. I'm not actually 100% in the whole principle behind it, so it just doesn't feel like you're making a good commitment behind it. It almost, to me, it felt like almost like if you took somebody who's non-religious and were like, what if you plan to like go to like service like every day of the week? It was like, I guess that's something they could do, but they're not going to personally get anything out of it because they don't really believe in it. So that's kind of my weird thought process behind it all.
I didn't think I went into it thinking too much of the animal rights aspect of it personally, but I also just, without pairing it with calorie counting, which we really haven't said we would do because I feel that calorie counting in and of itself is effective, but then you don't have to restrict anything if you're just going to count calories. It's, if you're just going to go on this diet, is it sustainable forever? And you'll be thin. If you're just looking at it from a purely health standpoint, will cutting meat specifically, will it make you lose weight regardless of what you eat otherwise? No. Like, there are a lot of products that are high in fat, or probably mostly fat, high in fat or sugar, that you can eat while being on a vegetarian diet. So if your thought is, I'm going to go vegetarian because I'm going to lose weight, the answer is maybe. If you also are watching the calories.
Yeah.
We know ice cream is bad for us, but it wasn't specifically restricted. You can eat vegetarian pizza. Like, I think the thing, when you compare it to gluten-free, is when you cut gluten, you cut so many things that are high in calories.
Yeah.
You can eat meat, you can eat a lot of meat, which probably all we ate is meat. Yeah. But when you cut when you cut meat, there's a lot of gluten products that you can eat that you'll still be overweight. Like, if we cut vegetables, don't cut vegetables. If we cut meat and gluten, we'd be very, very thin. But it's the gluten.
Yeah.
So.
I guess the way my individual eating habits work is I generally have meat be a pretty solid base for things in conjunction with other vegetables. So if I'm already not eating meat, then it's kind of like, I guess I'll just replace this with more carbs or something that's just not going to be more healthy for me. So I didn't find myself with like the gluten-free, you didn't even have to try to make healthy choices. With this one requires you to actually
be mindful.
You would have to be a lot more mindful.
Yeah. So I wasn't particularly mindful this week. I think partially that's because I followed the liquid diet, which it was like, you can eat food again. It was like, I'm going to eat food again.
Yeah.
I appreciate things that are more restrictive because you don't have to be that mindful. You know? So when we were going gluten-free, I didn't feel like I was very mindful because I knew what I wasn't allowed to eat, and that happened to be things that were very high in calories, because carbs are. So I would say, I think vegetarian, as far as like, is it hard to be vegetarian? For me, it's personally not. I know it's harder for you because you're a very carnivorous person in general. I felt like it was easy. The thing that, for me, was the hardest of sticking to it is you can cook so many vegetables and the liquid leaves them, and suddenly you're like, oh, this is a single meal, so I have to cook again tomorrow. Or you make something and it's great if you cook it fresh, but it's not great if you reheat it. That's the hardest part for me is I don't necessarily cook every day because I'm single. It's easy for me to be like, I'm going to cook this thing and I'm going to eat it all week.
Yeah.
I think if I had chosen a different meal, like vegetarian chili, that would have been easier. Because chili, typically, soups and chilies reheat well. But if it's a really vegetable-based, I don't feel like it, like roasted vegetables. The point is for them to be fresh out of the oven. You're not going to want to then microwave them. I also feel like while vegetables seem inexpensive when you buy them individually, the fact that they spoil really fast and that you'd have to eat a lot of them for it to be your entire meal doesn't actually end up being the least expensive option. So I would have to be a lot more mindful of the types of recipes that I could potentially reheat than I was. Because for me, I ended up eating a lot of yogurt just for lunch. I'll be like, my lunch is yogurt because this is something that's pre-packaged that I can just pack for lunch without having had to cook it the night before. I obviously work a full-time job, so to bring something that has to be cooked on the stovetop or in the oven is not an option for me.
I found myself doing a lot of snacking, which obviously is not that great when you're having sugary cereal instead of a full meal, when you kind of want to eat something quick and ready to go. Because it was kind of the thing you said where it's like, I don't want to sit there and like necessarily like have to chop up a giant bunch of vegetables. Like if you were already saying like, I have to chop and cook up a whole bunch of vegetables, and then by the time I eat it, I end up eating it all and still not feeling quite full. For me, it's going to be like, am I going to have to eat 2 whole heads of broccoli to feel full?
Well, I did an okay job in that respect because I did a sweet potato. So that's more starchy and filling. But I would say one thing we ran into is we tried to go to just a small grocery section of a Family Dollar or something like that.
Yeah.
You cannot find vegetarian-friendly options. You're not going to find vegetarian Hot Pockets or, pizza bites. They're not just going to be cheese. They're going to have pepperoni in them. Everything other than potato chips if you go to a small store, you can't find soup. Soup will have beef broth in it. So you can't even find, a veggie soup if you don't have a wide selection, like a full grocery store. It's probably going to be beef and vegetable. So everything appeals to the masses, and the masses aren't vegetarian. They do eat meat. So if you're like, I want to just get a quick thing that I can microwave, you're stuck with things like macaroni and cheese, which then you run into something that's not diet friendly. Pasta isn't diet friendly,
Yeah.
So you can't find something that is both quick, casual, and diet friendly if you don't open yourself up to a wider selection. So it's really inconvenient in that respect, is you have to go to a grocery store every time you want to buy groceries, because you're not going to find it if you're just in like a gas station probably either. Sometimes you do go to you're already getting gas, you're going to go to the food section and be like, is there something I can just pick up here on my way home because I'm already here? You're probably not going to find that.
No.
And it's going to be junk food either way. So that I didn't like either.
Yeah. So, any more thoughts on vegetarianism?
The one thing I do like about it is you are more creative in your cooking. It doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
Like cauliflower hash, not my deal. But I made a falafel spiced chickpea flatbread, which I posted on our Twitter, and it was really good. I'm like, it's like not like pizza, but it's a weird, it's a flatbread that's a little bit different. And I was like, oh, this is actually good, and I would never have thought about that if I wasn't doing this. So I feel like when you do something that does force you to cook, because you can't find the vegetarian quick fixes, you are going to learn how to cook and spice things differently, because the more you diet, the more you go, wow, everything is bland. It's just, even when you're not doing vegetarian, most of the time it'll be like a chicken breast that's been steamed and some steamed vegetables. If you don't learn about spices, you're going to be like, food is bland and I hate my life. If you happen to think, food makes life worth living.
Yeah.
So I think that when you limit things in that way, you're going to learn about different types of food that you wouldn't learn about necessarily. So I think that's a good aspect, just to try it, But I feel like if I were to do stuff like this, it would be, the meatless Mondays, where you just do it one day a week,
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just I found myself, because I also like to prepare large meals, and for me, just doing large meals of just something like vegetables, I think it just more opened my mind and how much I depend on meat in terms of just as a base for a lot of my food.
I'm not nearly as dependent as you are. I'm indifferent to most meats. I don't think I get excited about it. I'm more like a ground turkey bacon, chicken breasts. I stick with the birds for the most part. I find them inexpensive. I think a lot of beef is fatty, and I end up with grizzle in my mouth, and then it makes me lose my appetite. Mm. So I like the lean meats, and to cut those is kind of, I could easily see how people could be like, well, I just replace it with tofu, because I eat lean things anyways. So that part wasn't hard for me. It's the fact that I didn't feel like the expense of, you bought a soy-based ground beef knockoff.
Yeah.
We'll say. I think it's $5.
Yeah.
It's way more expensive, and I think we ran into that with gluten-free too, is things that are made specifically for a type of diet are astronomically more expensive.
Yeah.
So it's hard if you aren't a high-income individual to be like, I'm going to replace the meat products. It ends up being like, well, I'm going to have nothing that I don't make myself. If I were to have a black bean burger, I'd be mushing it myself. And that's so much more time consuming than taking ground beef, which you're just going to salt and pepper, maybe put a little bit of garlic powder, and you're going to mush it together. If you make a black bean burger yourself, there's a lot more spices to it. And I think you have to add breadcrumbs. I don't remember. I haven't made them in a long time. But it's a lot more steps than just, especially if you cook the black beans and don't use canned.
Yeah.
It'd be forever. So much cooking. So it's, it's a time, if time is money, time and actual grocery store budget it's astronomically more expensive to follow this diet than to just be like, here's $3 worth of chicken. I'm going to make chicken noodle soup.
Yeah.
You can be poor and eat meat. It's hard to be poor and be a vegetarian.
Yeah. Unless you just want to strictly only eat canned vegetables, which is then just like...
You can eat frozen, too.
Frozen, yeah.
But still.
Overall, how do you feel about vegetarian diet?
Like I said, I think a meatless Monday could be fun just to add new recipe ideas and techniques. I'd probably do like meatless Sundays because I'm lazy. I don't like cooking I don't like cooking after work. Who does? Who likes cooking after work? You want to cook everything on Sunday and eat that for the rest of the week. Ideally.
So thumbs up, thumbs down, middle?
I'm a middle grounder.
Even though I said all the stuff I said, I'm still kind of in the middle with it, where I'm just kind of like, I wasn't really feeling it.
I think it's a to each their own.
Yeah.
I can understand how other people would enjoy it. I don't think that it's a diet. I think it's a dietary restriction, and the difference is you still have to count your calories as if you aren't dieting if you want to lose weight, because you can eat a half a bag of Cheetos. You can eat half a tub of ice cream. You have to be mindful still. Whereas other diets are so restrictive that you don't have to be mindful. It's mindful for you. Yeah. So, I can understand why people do it. But I don't think it's an actual diet.
After all that said about vegetarianism, let's talk about Pilates.
Pilates.
I remember doing Pilates at one point, and the Pilates that I did was very similar. It wasn't very different from the stuff that I did this last week, where I found myself doing a lot more of core work, which is, I feel it's very beneficial. It's a lot of core work. The problem is it's, one, I felt like I didn't get the cardio that I needed, and two, Pilates is one of those things where I'm not going to name names, but there's some people where I feel like they don't quite know what they're talking about. They're just a person that's able to do the moves, but it's just like you're not describing it in terms that I don't feel a normal human being would be able to accomplish.
I think it doesn't bother me that it's not medical terms or actual physical terms. I think they're trying to be quirky or make it more fun than it is by saying things like avocado masher. That's what this little graphic represents. You're like, what the heck is my avocado masher? I get that they're trying to be funny or make it more accessible. I don't know, because I've had like yoga where they'll say something weird because it's almost like they're trying to distract you from the discomfort of it. But that can either go over well where you're like, ha, they're funny. Like, there have been yoga things where you're like, oh, this is so painful. And then they'll be like, smile. And I'm like, I do feel better now that I'm smiling. It's just a little thing where it's like, it reminds you to release some tension, but sometimes it doesn't go over well. It just makes you more frustrated when you're in pain, and then they say something ridiculous, especially if you're holding an awkward move. You might end up falling because you're so distracted by the stupid thing they just said.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with saying something that's a little weird or off, because I also done yoga, but when somebody says, extend your fingertips to the sky, that's a fancy way of saying, just put your arms up in the air. But at least you understand it. When someone says magnetize your thighs, I don't know what that means, and I don't want to hurt myself.
As I try to, does that mean I'm trying to, are they magnets to each other? You know, yeah, you're like, what are you talking about? What am I supposed to be doing here?
Because some of these moves are very, it requires a lot of holding in your core and being very focused on holding a position or doing some movement. And when they just throw a random term out there and you're just sitting there like, I don't want to hurt myself and or fall down, I feel like I'm not getting my exercise because I'm sitting there trying to decrypt a riddle.
Okay. But instructors aside, because that's really what you're getting at, is you don't like some instructors, which I think is a different issue than the exercises themselves. Because you don't have to follow the same instructor.
Yes.
So the question is, do you like Pilates? Not do you dislike Pilates instructors? Because those are different topics.
I mean, it's definitely an instructor thing. But I felt like there was a common thread of just a specific, almost like weird, like group language that was kind of involved. Where
I found that in exactly one video. So.
Okay.
I feel like you're getting a little bit on one topic that isn't related to Pilates. It's related to Pilates instructors.
Yeah.
And YouTube personalities can be a little bit for entertainment value.
Yes.
So we didn't go to a class in our local area. So think we need to cut the conversation on instructors short so we can talk about actual Pilates. Do you dislike Pilates?
I thought it was okay. Like I said, I kind of enjoyed engaging the core, but it was still missing that cardio aspect that you kind of want in something that's going to last like a half hour. You don't want to spend a half hour kind of just holding a position, feeling really hurt, like messing up your back, other stuff like that, and then still feel like I felt like I didn't really do a lot.
Yeah. So, my criticisms of it, I think that form is always going to be a big deal, but there are certain exercise programs I think it's easier. They're easier on the form. I think the good thing of Pilates is it feels a lot like when you say you do push-ups, it's supposed to be, because it's like more of a dynamic movement, you're working muscles you don't necessarily intend versus like a bicep curl where it's like, this is just my bicep and it's not working anything else.
Yeah.
I feel that Pilates is good about being like, well, you're working a full body thing and it might be tiny muscles you don't normally pay attention to. But it really doesn't lift your heart rate up very high because I wear a Fitbit. I think my heart rate would hover in like the 80s. Where my resting, I shouldn't say my resting, because your resting is when you're at your most lazy. Your everyday, like, walking around in life is, like, 68 beats per minute, let's say, just randomly.
Yeah.
So when you're only at, like, 80-something, you're like, I'm just holding it here, and it hurts a lot, but it is not burning fat. It's just building muscles exclusively. Because when we did, like, body weight training, if you do burpees, if you do push-ups, it does elevate your heart rate. Yeah. So you are getting, at least in the fat burning zone, if not in the actual cardio zone with those. With Pilates, I didn't feel like I was getting in any zone that's going to burn fat. So it's like, I'm going to have tight abs somewhere in there. They're going to be so toned somewhere in there.
I will say out of all the stuff we did, including like Shanti, bodyweight exercises.
And just walking.
Well, walking's a little bit different from what I'm trying to say, is that this is the one where, like, whenever I was in the middle of a workout, this was the most one where, like, in either each individual exercise or movement, I'll be like, when am I done with this?
Yes.
When am I done?
I found it, so when I walked into this, my impression was, I'm pretty sure this is holding uncomfortable positions for 30 seconds at a crack, and then uncomfortable movement that's very restricted. And I was like, but maybe I'm wrong. And then I started the first video, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's like holding yourself in that boat position with your legs like this and, like this guy, this little guy. It's like the boat position, and then just doing this with your arms.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I wouldn't say you sweat. I would say you start to glisten, like on a hot day, where it's just like, there's a sheen on my forehead, but it's not quite reaching drip levels.
Yeah.
As disgusting as that is, that's what you want when you work out. You want to have to shower, not just wash your face. And that does, like, the next day your core will hurt, but why do I care about why do I care about building muscles I can't yet see? So I could see you liking Pilates if you just want to tone and not build muscle. Because I don't feel like I feel that you do need weight involved if you want to build mass. But if you're already very thin, but you feel like you're a little bit lacking in tone, it could be good.
Yeah.
But if you're just starting out and you're asking for weight loss, I don't think it's the best. Because you really aren't elevating your heart rate. And for how much time you're spending on it, for a half hour, you're burning maybe what you burn when you walk. So for the time, I feel there's not a whole lot of payout. So it's one of those where when you think of an overall weekly routine, I could see having a Pilates day the way you might have like a yoga day because it's good for stretching and it's good for mindfulness. The thing I don't like about Pilates is I find it really regimented. So we're going to do squats now. Do them and it's going to be 8 counts. And it's like, and a 1, and a 2, and a 3, It feels very much like the workouts that my mom failed at. Like I'm looking at like 90s where it's just like, and you're counting it and you hate it and it's awful and you are watching the clock because when you do something that has more flow to it, I feel like you're distracted, and if working out is going to be painful, it should at least be distracting.
If I'm going to be doing a workout, I want to be so tired that I can't think about what I want to do besides other than the workout.
Or I want to have fun.
Yeah.
Like I think walking is easy because you can listen to a podcast and get lost in your thoughts. I'm not very good at some workouts, but even if it's weight training, you usually have a number you want to hit because you're trying to beat your own score. And there's kind of a satisfaction in that because it's like, if you make it a scorecard, you're like, last time I did 10 of these. I just need to do 12 today. It's going to be 12. It's like you're creating a goal for yourself. But if you're just watching a video that has a 25-minute thing and you're doing what they're doing and then all they're doing is counting, I don't find it nearly as hard as like T25 because he's not counting you out on things. It's just you kind of get a sense that there's a time thing, but it's a lot of cardio too.
Well, he changes it up sometimes at least every 30 seconds. So you're doing something totally different before you start getting into your mind, I really don't want to do this. Whereas Pilates is like, we're going to hold this for like a minute and a half.
Okay, I didn't experience that. I think it was 30 seconds. It just felt like a minute and a half.
Oh.
Because you're doing, I think it's the counting that bugs me the most. Oh. Is it's like 8, 7, 6, but like it just makes you really aware that you're just doing a static movement. I think that's like it seems like it's dynamic, but because some of the moves make you use multiple muscle groups, but the actual movement is just so. And these are squats. And now we're gonna lift our leg like this. And now we're gonna the reason it feels like a minute and a half is it'll be like we're gonna do squats for 30 seconds. Now we're going to hold them and do them lower for 30 seconds. But it's the same move, but they're acting like it's a different move.
Yeah.
So you'll be like this high, and then this high, and now just do it on your toes.
Yeah.
Or it'll be like on this toe with this toe up, but the other foot flat, and then you switch it, and then it's both. So you end up doing it in a minute and a half because it's essentially the same move, but different variations of it, but back to back. And it makes you just want to give up. And you're not having fun, I think, is the thing. You're just not having fun. It hurts without any joy.
Yeah.
Like, people who do sports enjoy it. When you lift weights, you like to see those gains. With this, you're just like, it's a workout routine, and I'll probably see results because I'm sore the next day. But the other problem I have is because there's so much core work, I'm very bad at keeping my back flat. So I'll have a lot of lower back pain, and I prefer workouts where you don't have to be that strict on your form or you'll injure yourself, because I'll probably end up injuring myself because I don't have an instructor to be like, oh, yeah, your back is like hunched like a little gargoyle,
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where I definitely, as I was going through the YouTube videos, I was like, I bet if this was done in person, this would be a lot better because I could have somebody actually tell me if I'm doing a bad job or if because sometimes it's like put your like thighs right together or doing something where it's like I physically can't quite do this, where like at least Shaun T was like, here's modified.
I only saw one video, which was the Blogalates woman. She's the most popular person on YouTube, but she's the only person I saw who had a modifier.
Yeah.
Most other workouts have a modifier, so if you aren't fit or aren't capable of it or it hurts, because the thing about doing cardio, if you feel like you can't do what they're showing, you can just jog in place until that particular move is over. with Pilates, I feel like if I can't do it without hurting myself, I'm just going to sit there and not be exercising for the 30 seconds until they do something I can do again, which is, again, not an efficient use of time.
Yeah.
To just be sitting there watching them.
That's kind of what I did for some places, because I'm just like, I can't feel like I hold this, I can't modify it, and everything hurts right now, and I don't have anybody to tell me if what I'm doing is even right.
Yeah.
So I could just hurt myself, or hope that the next exercise will be better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so overall, I can see how people like it for toning when they're already very thin. I don't think I personally would do that. I feel like I would just move on to weight training.
So are we giving an overall rating for Pilates?
I don't like Pilates. For me personally, I'd give it a thumbs down. I can see how other people like it, so maybe a thumbs
Yeah.
This degree down.
I was gonna say it's a thumbs down for me, and it's gonna be a for everybody else if you're like, I do this Pilates class once a week.
It's like a do what feels good.
Yeah.
If you like the way it feels, if you don't have a problem with like arching your back or on accident when you're doing ab movements, I don't like ab training in general. Like, because I feel like I have a tendency to do weird things with my lower back where I'm either hunched or arcing, and then I hurt myself, and I just can't help it in regular movements, which is why I like things that are more controlled. And also, when I do things with my hips, like they'll have you do the, like, with your legs where you're, like, doing circles, like this. I don't know if you did that where you're on your back. But my hip clicks. Like, on the way down over here, my hip will click each rotation, and it's very uncomfortable for me. So it's just like a weird body quirk where you don't get that when you're on a machine where you're just like, okay, your elbows are here, and this is the movement. Yeah. You cannot screw it up. The hand placement is only this far apart, so you can't be like, oh, I'm flaring, or, Yeah. So without someone to make sure you're not doing things wrong, I'm just not doing them right, and I'm hurting myself, and I don't feel like the cardio payout is there.
With that said, any results?
I gained more weight.
I gained a pound.
Yeah, I gained like 1.5 pounds. So did you have negative results or neutral results on liquid diet?
I had neutral results. Neutral.
So after 2 weeks of not really seeing success, we've decided we want to kick it up a notch, which means we are going to do jogging because it's cardio. We also want to kick it out of the way before the summer ends because we don't want to do it when it's cold outside. So we thought we'd do that right away because a lot of people are joggers. Their morning or evening routine is to just go for a run. Seems like a good workout. Let's see if it works, right? And then to really kick up our diet, we're going to do the ketogenic diet, which, as far as I understand it, the premise is if you don't eat sugars or carbs, you don't have it turn into glucose in your body, and then you can only burn fat, so you go into ketosis. You're supposed to eat only 5 to 10% carbs in your diet. Like, no more than 30% protein.
Yes.
So 30% or less, and then the rest is fat. Which I feel, when you hear that, your brain goes, I want to lose fat. Now I'm eating fat? Yeah. But it makes sense because sugar is supposed to be burned off right away, so if you're just eating it when you're sitting here, it's not being burned. It's just getting stored as fat, right? Theoretically. Going into it, I'm nervous because it sounds like I can't eat anything. But we have just said that we found the last diet not restrictive enough. This is going to be restrictive.
Yeah, this next week is basically everything we've been complaining about in the last couple of weeks, where it's like, there's no cardio in this, there's no cardio in this. Fine, all cardio. Oh, this diet's not restrictive enough. This diet needs to be more, we need more rules on what we can and can't eat. Fine, here's a bunch of rules.
Yes. Still not calorie counting, so the question is, can you just be keto and lose weight? Because the things that I've heard about keto are a lot like gluten-free, where it's like you're gonna lose weight, you're gonna have a lot more energy, and I've heard you can be more focused. I don't know if that's what they say about gluten-free, but I've heard that you're more focused when you go into it. And we did check into this because if your body's supposed to go into ketosis, I was like, does it do that within a week? And the answer is that it's supposed to happen after like 2 days. So after 2 days, I'm expecting more energy. Ooh, and they say that you're not as hungry, which I've always heard protein is what makes you not hungry. So to be told to eat fat, I'm like, is that going to work?
I guess we'll find out.
So that's what we're doing. If you want to follow along or just be updated when we do stuff, subscribe, hit the little bell icon, and you will know when we update.
If you have any other diets or exercises you would like us to try, leave a comment down below.
Until next time. Pew, 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 pew.